Recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I am told that I'm not to say to move to strike the last word. Evidently, the resident lawyer on our committee says.
Gentleman is recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit a letter from more than 60 organizations representing patients, providers, pharmacists, small businesses, and advocates in support of this bill.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to see my bill, H.R. 2880, the Protecting Patients Against PBM Abuses Act, is included in this markup today. This bipartisan legislation that I introduced with Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester will protect patients and pharmacies from harmful PBM practices that are making healthcare inaccessible and unaffordable for millions of Americans. First, before I begin, I'd like to put into context just how powerful PBMs have become. Just 3 PBMs control 80% of all prescriptions processed in the U.S. They own or are owned by insurers and have vertically consolidated their businesses to own everything and everyone between themselves and the patients, including doctors, pharmacies, group purchasing organizations, and more. Yet PBMs do nothing more than process claims. They're paper pushers. I like to say they bring no value to the healthcare system whatsoever. Well, now, you don't just have to take my word for it. Reports from the GAO, MedPAC, and the OIG confirm these things. Patients are being deprived of billions in discounts at the pharmacy counter. According to a recent report from the GAO, Part D beneficiaries pay more than their insurers for 79 of the 100 most highly rebated drugs under the program. And PBMs are often paying pharmacies they own more for drugs than they are paying independent pharmacies. It's time for Congress to do its duty and stop these PBMs from gaming the system and return the dollars they profit back to patients. That's why I urge this committee to support this bill, the Protecting Patients Against PBM Abuses Act. PBMs currently get compensated by charging fees calculated as a percentage of the cost of the medicine. When PBMs have misaligned incentives to favor medicines with higher list price, it can lead to higher costs for patients who face cost sharing and deductibles and co-insurance that is typically based on list price. This is one of the examples that Dr. Neal was giving just a second ago. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that across the selection of so-called specialty generic drugs, Cigna and CVS's prices were at least 24 times higher on average than roughly what the medicines manufacturer charge. It can also mean patients have fewer and higher cost choice when PBMs disfavor generic or lower price brand competitors. For example, the 3 largest PBMs continue to block more than 1,150 treatments from their formularies, including low-cost insulin alternatives. Delaying action any longer on this bill will result in increased costs for patients. You know, my patients never ask me to dispense them a medication with the highest priced medicine. Why do the PBMs think that's what's best for patients? By delinking administrative fees paid to PBMs from the price of medicines, this proposal will help to correct these misaligned incentives and bring relief to patients at the pharmacy counter. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimates that delinking in Part D would save more than $200 million in federal spending. Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester and I are proposing this bipartisan bill that will help patients afford their medicine and protect them from harmful PBM practices. Another critical part of this bill is that it prohibits PBMs from reimbursing non-affiliated pharmacies at a rate less than they reimburse their own pharmacies. A recent MedPAC report indicated that vertically integrated PBMs in Medicare Part D may be benefiting from higher reimbursements to their own pharmacies while increasing costs to the Part D program. This bill, the Protecting Patients Against PBM Abuses Act, ends PBM's misaligned incentives that are driving up prices and costs for patients. Especially now, with inflation near 40-year highs, Congress must use all tools at its disposal to help vulnerable patients stretch the value of their dollar. Now, let me be clear. Opponents to this legislation are choosing to prioritize insurer and PBM profits over savings for patients. Patients deserve the best drugs at the lowest cost, and pharmacies deserve the right to do business without the hassle of middlemen looking to make a cheap buck. I greatly appreciate the work of this committee and so many of my colleagues to start to rein in these PBM tactics and put patients first. But we must continue to do more. That's why I urge my colleagues to support this bill, the Protecting Patients Against PBM Abuses Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does anyone seek recognition? Are there any other recognition? Are there any